Good evening, everyone.
So maybe.
Sir have joined with us today, and I would like to invite Meenakshi and Naina to take over the stage as the interviewers. Thank you, sir, for the inconvenience caused. There was a slight issue on the time zone difference, so when we calculated, it became an issue. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and good morning, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect. A very warm welcome to the 7th session of the Secret of the Circle webinar series, an event organized by Notikums Event Management. We are a student-led initiative that aims at promoting awareness about world issues in the youth. Our flagship event is the Global Youth Colloquium Model United Nations, also known as the GYCMUN. This webinar series aims at keeping the youth in par with the happenings of the world and encourages them to share their thoughts about the same. We decided to name the webinar series The Secret of the Circle to portray that discussions here occur without a power hierarchy, symbolizing a circle which represents unity, harmony, and equal consideration of all its participants. Today's webinar is on the topic Unpacking Gender Identities, Expressions, and Sexual Orientation, a guide to allyship. For the same, we are pleased to have an internationally recognized civil rights lawyer and social activist, attorney Evan Wolfson. Sir is the founder of the Freedom to Marry, a pioneering campaign that played a pivotal role in winning the same-sex couples the right to marry in the United States. The journey behind this win in the case of 𝗬𝗪𝗏 versus Hodges has also been portrayed by an award-winning director, Eddie Rosenstein, in the documentary The Freedom to Marry. Widely acknowledged as the architect of the marriage equality movement, Sir has been an advocate for human rights around the world. Sir acted as the co-counsel in the historic case of Bayer versus Mike that launched the ongoing global conversation with regard to the LGBTQIA+ community's right to marry. He was also the representing counsel for James Dale in the landmark Supreme Court case of Boy Scouts of America et al. V. Dale in 2000. Sir has been named as one of the 100 most influential lawyers by the National Law Journal in 2000, and also one of the most influential people by the Times Magazine in 2004. Sir is also the recipient of the Barnard Medal of Distinction alongside ex-US President Barack Obama in the year 2012. Sir also teaches law and social change at the Georgetown Law School as well as Yale University and is a senior counsel at the reputed Dentons. Sir, I welcome you. And I also give the floor to Naina right now to proceed with the webinar. Thank you.
Good morning, sir. We hope to have a very interactive and informative session with you. Marking the beginning of this webinar, I would like you to ask you the first question. Now, while there are discussions on the LGBTQIA+ community and of important related concepts, access to such information and platforms for discussion is limited. While most of us know that sex is a biological concept and that gender is a social construct, we often confuse these with the concepts of gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation. To set the tone for the conversation, we request you to please elaborate on them.
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you. It's very good to be with you all. It's a shame we can't be with each other physically these days, but at least we can now be with each other through these technologies. And so it's very good to have a chance to share this time with you today. So when we talk about sexual orientation, what we're talking about is a person's romantic or sexual or both attraction to other people. It's which kind of people are you typically romantically or sexually attracted to. And so when we talk about sexual orientation, we're usually talking about terms like, in our modern era, gay, lesbian, bisexual. We're talking about there are men like me who are predominantly attracted to other men, romantically or affectionately or intimately. Now, of course, this doesn't mean that you don't like people who are if you're a man, a woman, or a woman, a man, and so on. You can like people, you can have friends, you can even sometimes be attracted to people, but it's your predominant attraction. And it's pretty much within you. It's not something you choose. You don't wake up one day and decide, today I think I will be attracted to women or to men. You are attracted to what you're attracted to. When we talk about gender identity, what we're not talking about there is attraction. We're talking about your sense within yourself as to how you identify, who you think you are. Do you identify predominantly as a man? Do you identify predominantly as a woman? Do you identify, for some people, in a more non-binary, not either or way? It's your own internal sense of who you are in terms of your identity, not who you're attracted to, but who you are within. And again, this is not something people choose. This is who we all are. Some people are tall, some people are short, some people are bald. These are things that are part of the normal spectrum of human difference and human diversity and human wonderfulness. And then another term that we often hear is gender expression. And what that's talking about is not your sense within, but it's how you express yourself to the world. How do you present in a way that other people would read as a man, as a woman, as non-binary. And in some cases, this is also not something people can control. Some people present in ways that people just automatically read or culturally read as more masculine, more feminine, more mixed, etc. But other people, and sometimes people, can choose how they want to present themselves. They can cut their hair, they can wear certain clothes, they can try to embrace particular roles or fashions or whatever that present them in a certain way. So anyway, these are three different ideas: sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. And then the last one I'll just say is we often do talk about gender or sex. And the correct word really here is sex, but sometimes people soften it with the word gender. Sex refers to the physical composition of your anatomy, both your external anatomy, such as your genitalia, but also your internal anatomy, such as chromosomes and so on. And we typically, in our societies in modern times today, talk about two sexes, male or female. But we also know scientifically that it's a little more complicated than that as well. That there are some people who are less binary in that way, and intersex people and so on. But again, this is something people typically do not choose for themselves. It's what they are presented with by nature and by the way the culture reads it. And then the question of how you deal with your sex and how society deals with sex is something we can all work together and change. So those are four different overlapping but different ideas.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to the second question, which is we talk about the discrimination meted out against the LGBTQIA community, and we often don't recognize that such stigmatization transcends the level of just being mere stigmatizations, but instead it leads to actual denial of human rights. Now, how do we bring into conversation such violations of human rights?
Yeah, so one answer to your question is that, in my view as an activist, the chief engine of change is conversation. The more we talk with one another, people to people, across our differences, the more we can understand that difference is something to be celebrated and not something to diminish any people. We just, as human beings on this planet, we have differences. But our differences are part of what make us rich and strong and wonderful and to be celebrated, not to be feared. So conversation, actually getting to hear from another person and share stories and share values, is the most powerful engine of change. Most people want to be fair. Most people want to be kind. Most people want to be good, and nobody's perfect. It's not all the time, and not everybody, but most. So if we help other people with our conversation, with our stories, with our understanding, with information, with reassurance over time, we can move people, open hearts and minds, and help people do better. So the chief engine for combating stigma and discrimination and fear and isolation is conversation. Now, conversation consists of at least two parts. There's your part, where you are sharing your story, where you're opening up, where you are opening your ears and hearing what the other person has to say, but you're helping provide the information and the values and the assurance and the empathy and the emotion that can help reach other people. But conversation is also about listening. It's also about trying better to understand where the other person is coming from. And so, that takes time, and it's not easy, and none of us is perfect. But these are the ways we can most effectively combat stigma and discrimination and legal and political wrong that can flow from prejudice. So one other point I will make is that in countries like the United States or like India or many of the other countries that people may be in, it's not only what we do as people to people that matters, it's also the law that sends a message. And the law cannot change all prejudice, all discrimination, all stigma. But the law should be on the side of the people who are experiencing discrimination and stigma and injustice. So when you have a country such as the United States, where up until recently, gay people, for example, were not allowed to marry, it was not only about the prejudices and fears that people had person to person, but the law itself was sending a bad message. The law itself was saying gay people are not the same. Gay people are not fully human. Gay people are not worthy of love and respect and family and coming together. When we changed that law, it didn't erase all stigma. It didn't erase all prejudice. We still have much work to do in the United States. But it did put the law on the side of openness, of fairness, of inclusion, of respect, of equality, of dignity. And this is the same challenge now that you have in India and in other countries where the law is not yet where it needs to be.
Thank you, sir. Now, moving on to the next question. We often see the LGBTQIA+ community being misrepresented in both popular media and literature. More often than not, such misinterpretations strengthen stereotypical attitudes towards the community. In your opinion, how do we address the issue of misrepresentation, and how do we actively check these stereotypes?
Yeah, the most effective way to combat stereotypes is to tell our stories and to make sure we have more stories, more conversation, more examples out there. People may grow up hearing stereotypes, but when they actually meet real people and or even see the stories of real people on a teleconference like this or on a television or what have you, and then have conversations about that, they can change their ideas. They can realize, oh, not all gay people are like this. Not all Indian people are like that. Not all so on. They get to know people on a more human basis, and they connect that information, those stories, with their own values of wanting to be fair, of wanting to be kind, of wanting to respect, of not worrying so much, of believing we all share this planet, we share this time, and we have to treat other people like we want to be treated. We have to be fair. And so the best way to combat stereotypes is by giving more information, but it's not just a matter of telling people things. We also have to show things. We have to let people experience the reality and diversity of different people. And that requires time and storytelling and patience and trust that you can help them go from no to yes. It might not happen the first time. You have to stay with them. I mean, I think we all have the experience of, in our families, we love our families, we learn from our families, and our families can also annoy us, can also irritate us in a way that we can be calm when it comes to strangers. But sometimes when it's your own family, when it's your own friends, they can push your buttons. But we stay with it, we stick with it, we engage with them, we don't write them off right away. And that's what we have to do in society. We have to have more stories, more visibility, more opportunities for more people to share their stories, and we have to talk about that with people we trust, friends and family, which means that if you're trying to combat, for example, anti-gay stereotypes, on the one hand, we need more gay people talking in the media, on Zoom conferences, in our friend circles, and so on. But it also means that those of us who are not gay have to go out and talk with our non-gay friends also about why this matters, what we learned, what we saw in a conversation, why we care about making India a better society for gay people, a more just society, what we feel about treating transgender people correctly. Because as non-gay people, as non-transgender people, as non-Indian people, whatever we're not, we can also be effective messengers to help open the hearts and minds of other people who are more like us when we are trying to help them understand people who are a little different. And so that's the real key over time to combating stereotypes and changing hearts and minds. The one thing I will add is that it's not only about the personal conversation part, it's also about organized activism. Organizations and each of us as people joining organizations can work to make society better. We can work to promote more storytelling, to promote more visibility, to promote more conversation. And what you're doing today, hosting a conversation like this, it's not just about your own personal listening to the conversation. You are all part of an organization, of an effort, of an event to try to have an opportunity to present more information and to engage more conversation. We need more of these kinds of organized efforts to change the law, to remove barriers, and to promote conversation.
Thank you, sir. Speaking about organized activism, you were in fact the founder of Freedom to Marry, which played a very important role with regard to the 2015 US Supreme Court decision. In India, we're at a stage where in 2018, Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code, which essentially criminalized consensual sex between two men, it essentially criminalized carnal intercourse between men and women and men. And it was recently, only in 2018, declared to be unconstitutional, and thereby allowing consensual intercourse between homosexuals also. It decriminalized the situation. According to you, what is your opinion about legislations and rulings of this kind? And also keeping in light the recent US election result, how do you think that the current government is going to, what's the fate of the LGBTQIA community going to be in the hands of the current government?
Yeah, so first of all, when the Indian court struck down finally 377, it was a tremendously important day all around the world because millions and millions and millions of people were recognized finally as being entitled to full dignity, full worth, and the aspiration of love and inclusion. And this discrimination and stigma that had been imposed on Indian society through colonial sources was finally struck down, so that the true Indian character of respecting diversity and welcoming gay and trans brothers and sisters and lovers as part of society could now move forward. So this was a huge victory, not only for India, but for the world. We had a similar struggle and a long fight, just as you did, to remove our similar laws here in the United States, which we finally were able to strike down in 2003. But we didn't stop there. We moved on not only to remove criminalization from people's lives, but to open the door to full inclusion, to embrace. And so the next big challenge, as far as gay and trans people in India is concerned, is to now end the exclusion from marriage. Marriage in your society, as in almost every society, including ours, is the central structure and the central language of love, commitment, family, equality, inclusion. And to be excluded from that is to be denied something very, very important. So I'm really happy to see, just in the last few weeks, cases now being filed in the Indian courts challenging the state's wrongful denial of the freedom to marry. And those cases will now move their way forward. I know at least one of the cases is brought by two friends of mine who were two of the lawyers on the 377 case. And this is very important. But one of the lessons we learned in the United States is that while litigation, going to court, is important, and we look to court to hold up the constitutional values of a rule of law society like India, like the United States, it's not enough. Litigation doesn't happen in a vacuum. And so what everyone else can do while the lawyers are doing their work in the courts is work in the court of public opinion. We need to engage the public in a conversation about who gay people are, why marriage matters, and our true shared values of the rule of law, of fairness, of justice, of kindness, of love, of family. And so this conversation is very, very important. The work that people do now in India to talk about gay people and the freedom to marry and dignity under the Indian Constitution, that work is as important outside the courtroom as the work the lawyers are now doing inside the courtroom. And what we saw in your Indian struggle to overthrow 377 is that it took time, and it took many twists in the road. It didn't just go like this. The more you now have this conversation and talk to your lawmakers and talk to your neighbors and talk to the public and talk to the media and tell stories and create this climate, the more likely you are to get the right result sooner rather than later. And I believe that the struggle in India will take less time than it took us, because you're in 2020. You're not in when we started, back when I was young and had hair. This is a different time, but you have to do the work. It has to happen. Now, an example of how you have to do the work, no matter where you live, is, of course, here in the United States, where for the last 4 years, we have endured a shameful, dangerous, malevolent administration that the American people, by the way, never voted for, but our system malfunctioned and it has been imposed. But happily, as everyone knows, last week, the American people went to the election in record numbers in our democracy. We're not as big as India, but we're the oldest democracy, and we went in record numbers, record turnout to vote out this shameful regime and to get America back on track. And Joe Biden, who has now been elected president, and Kamala Harris, who has now been elected vice president, and as you all know, is not only the first woman, not only the first Black person, but also the first Indian American to now come into the administration. We now have the opportunity as Americans to build back better and to get America back where it needs to be. Now, this is not going to happen easily. The same work I'm telling you to do in India, we have to do in the United States. But the election shows that we can do it. We can do it in your country, we can do it in our country. And democracies like the United States and India, which are not perfect, and where we sometimes elect bad people, we sometimes make mistakes, And we sometimes have regimes in power that don't respect the full constitutional rights and dignity of all people. Those societies, like ours, are also the societies where if we do the work, we can change things. We are lucky. We have the power to change things, even when they're going in the wrong direction. And so in India, as in the United States, that's what we have to do now. We have to get our countries back on track. We have to live up to our values of the rule of law, of dignity for all people, of equality, of respect for differences.
Thank you, sir. A small follow-up to the same question. We keep talking about the right to marry, but isn't marriage per se an institution which is predominantly patriarchal, and it comes from a patriarchal society? So why is it that there is always this fight to right to marriage?
So we have these debates in the United States as well. And of course, not everybody's going to agree. Not all gay people agree on everything. Not all Indian people agree on everything. Certainly not all American people agree on everything. One of my rules of activism is you don't need you need enough. So it's not about saying we have to wait until everybody agrees. It's about putting your ideas forward, listening to other people, and then moving forward with a goal and a strategy that you believe in, and other people will come and rally to you. And if you get enough people, that's how you win. It's not about everybody. So yes, here in the United States, there were some gay people, there still are some gay people, who thought that marriage was the wrong goal. We shouldn't fight for marriage, that marriage is patriarchal, as you said, it's oppressive, it's failing, that many people marry and get divorced. Why do we want to be part of this thing? But the majority of people don't agree with that. The majority of gay people, like the majority of non-gay people, saw that yes, marriage may not be perfect, not every marriage is good, not everybody agrees on everything, but to be denied something important like marriage is to be denied this bundle of tangible and intangible meanings and protections. And that's not something we should impose on other people. You have the freedom to marry or not marry. If you don't like it, don't marry. But don't tell other people they can't get married. They can't be part of it. They can't join. And most people believe that marriage, even if imperfect, does many good things. It brings families together. It takes two families and unites them. It helps us find another person in life who we can love, who we can care about, who we can take care of, who we can be responsible for, who will put up with us no matter how annoying we are. For many people, marriage is the structure in which they want to raise children, or they want to grow old, or they want to care for their own aging parents. And gay people have those same aspirations in life as non-gay people. Again, not everybody, but most. And so it's wrong for the government to say, because of who you are or who you love, we're going to treat you unequally. And most gay people believe that, even if they don't think marriage is for them. When you are denied marriage, you're allowing the government to say, you're less, you're other, you're different, you're not worthy. That cannot be in a democratic society like India or like the United States.
Thank you, sir. Now, moving on to the next question. Now, while it is understood that it is important to abolish penal laws that criminalize the LGBTQIA community, is there an additional need for a proactive set of exclusive legal measures to ensure the protection of the community against such harassment? What are your opinions on it as a lawyer?
Yes, absolutely. Getting rid of criminal laws that oppress you is, of course, a necessary and good first step. But we all want more out of life than just not to be arrested or harassed. We also want to be able to be in the workforce and earn a living. We want to be able to go out into society and go to a restaurant or a store or a hotel or a gym or a business without being excluded or turned away because of who we are or what we look like or who we love. We want to have housing that enables us to take shelter and to build a life. We want all these opportunities to participate in all the arenas of life. And in your society, as in our society, part of that protection that we give to people is to have laws that prohibit discrimination by employers, by workforces, by what we call public accommodations or businesses or hotels or restaurants. We have laws that prohibit discrimination in housing. These non-discrimination laws are important to protect people, particularly when we know that in our societies, people are too often discriminated against on certain bases that are very familiar. Bases like race and what you look like, or caste, or sex. Women are often oppressed and discriminated against, or sexual orientation, or gender identity, or religion. So we know that these are often typical bases on which people are discriminated against in important things. And so in our societies, we've enacted law to say that you can believe whatever you want to believe. In a free country, you can think whatever you want. If you want to think women are inferior, if you want to think gay people are bad, you have a right to think that. But you don't have a right to discriminate when it comes to the workplace, businesses, housing, speech, etc. And so we enact laws to do that. And in the United States, and I believe in India, those laws are not yet fully complete. And even when they're enacted, they're not always well enforced. And so we need to have, at the national level, but also at the local level, laws that protect people so that everybody can participate in the democratic society. And one of the things about those laws is they do, of course, exist, and we need to push to get them enacted so that they give guidance to businesses, to housing, etc., in order to avoid discrimination and in order to be punished if they discriminate. But for every one that gets punished or prosecuted, you have 10 or 100 who now conduct themselves better. And so it's not only that these laws are being used to enforce non-discrimination, they also teach a message of non-discrimination. They give guidance that sends a message of welcome and inclusion and affirmation. And that, in turn, helps change attitudes so that there's less discrimination. The law operates not only as a direct engine of redress, but it also operates as an instructor. And that's, again, why it's important that the law be on the right side, helping all people be part of the democratic society.
Thank you, sir. So you had mentioned about how people can have thoughts about, say, women are inferior. So a lot of the concepts that we have about our community and our interactions with the community is a productive social conditioning, and of which a large part is, say, inculcated during our formal school education. How important is it that we have LGBTQIA+ inclusive curriculums in our schools and universities? Say, in universities, to an extent, if you are a sociology student, human rights student, or a law student, you do have a lot of education which deals with the community. But say in formal school educations or other streams, how important is it to have such inclusive curriculums?
It is important to have inclusive curriculum appropriate at each age level for several reasons. Number one, because in every class, there are going to be young people who are themselves, quote unquote, different There are going to be women as well as men. There are going to be people of different race, of different class, of different geography, of different backgrounds. And there are going to be kids who may not know it yet, but who are going to grow up to be gay or bisexual or transgender. And even if they themselves don't know it, and even if it's not the kids themselves, they may come from families where they have family members, people they love, their parents, their brothers, their sisters, their uncles, their aunts, who are part of these different groups and so on. And so we want to affirm these young people. We want to affirm their sense of strength and self and their ability to dream of a life that they want to live, not be excluded or denied or have to hide or be ashamed because of their parents or because of their background or because of who they are. Secondly, there are of course non-gay kids and non-transgender kids who are in these classes also. But if I'm a parent of a child, I don't want to teach my child to look down on people who are different. I want my child to respect all people, to believe in difference, to understand the value of kindness and treating other people fairly and the way you want to be treated. And so even for parents of non-gay kids, and even for those non-gay kids, it's important to teach fairness and kindness and respect and difference. And not only is it important to do that to be nice, or as a matter of values, that this is how you want your kid to grow up because this is the way you think it's right to be as a person, which are good reasons. But it's also important because your kids, all children, are going to be growing up in a world where there's more and more difference, more and more diversity, where the stereotypes of the past hopefully are being pushed aside, and they need to learn how to deal with people who are different. So it's not only for the moral justice and kindness reasons that you want your kids to learn about difference and to learn how to deal with difference. Also, for your own kids' ability to succeed in society, they need to know how to deal with difference. If you are teaching your kids still to look down on women, to think that women are inferior, that child is now going to grow up in a world where, fortunately, women have more power, more visibility, are in the workplace, are more represented. Your child is going to be at a disadvantage if your child comes in with all this baggage and stereotypes and can't deal with women, or gays, or transgender, or people who have different races and so on. So these are the reasons why it is important to do the right thing and to teach the right thing in school as well as in life. And of course, it also should be happening by example in families. We all should be teaching these lessons and living appropriately. Now, we know that not everyone will, but you can't fix that. But you can fix how the majority functions. You can change hearts and minds, and you can change the law. And as you rightly say, that teaching begins with the parents, but is carried on also in the schoolroom. And I think it's important to understand that the kids learn a lot in school, but values are really first and foremost taught at home. And so parents will always be able to share with their kids their deepest values and their expectations of what makes a good life. But the school needs to welcome and support all people of different ideas and different backgrounds. And that's the contribution that the schools can provide.
Thank you, sir. Now, sexual orientation is a concept that has become an integral part of the conversations around the LGBTQIA+ community. The same does not remain true in the case of romantic orientation. Now, how important is discussing romantic orientation in these discussions according to you?
Well, we don't typically use the term romantic orientation. It's not something that you hear said a lot, but I think it goes to an important point, which is when we do hear the term sexual orientation, or when we talk about gay or bisexual or transgender, it sometimes gets reduced to sex, as if gay people only care about having sex with other people, gay men with gay men, lesbians with lesbians, and so on, as if all that it's about is sex. But if you're heterosexual, which is the way we describe the sexual orientation of non-gay people, you know that yes, you may be sexually attracted to women, to men, but you're also romantically attracted. You're also attracted to affection and ease and comfort and so on. Anyone who's ever been married knows that marriage is not just about sex. It's about love, about affection, about reliance, about companionship, about taking care, about sharing. And that's true for gay people as well. So in many ways, it might be better if we stopped talking about sexual orientation alone and also talked about affectional or romantic orientation, because that's really what's going on. Gay people are not just about sex in the same way that non-gay people are not just about sex. So even though the term is not a familiar term, I think it is important to describe the roundedness of human experience that is true for gay people just as it is true for our non-gay brothers and sisters. And by the way, that's one of the very important reasons why countries like India have to end the denial of the freedom to marry. Because yes, getting rid of 377 and stopping the criminalization of sex is important and good. But we don't only want sex in our lives. We want love, we want family, we want companionship, we want inclusion. And that's the language of marriage, not just 377.
So, is a dichotomy between sex and romance something that we as a society need to engage in, according to you?
I don't know if dichotomy is the right word, because for many people and many days, you're not feeling a dichotomy between sex and romance. You feel them together. You can combine these things. But we also know that they're not always combined. People sometimes have sex without romance, and people often have romance without sex. And even if you're happily romantically attracted, sexually attracted, and maritally connected to somebody, you don't always experience them at exactly the same time. A huge part of marriage is not related to sex. You're going shopping, you're raising kids, you're cleaning the house, you're not having sex, and you may not even want sex that day. And on the other hand, there's days where you want sex, whether or not you're married, whether or not you're romantically attracted. So I don't think it's a dichotomy. I think it's a rich relationship. But what's important is to not reduce gay people who you think of as different to a different way of thinking. In other words, to not think that just because they're gay, all they care about, all they think about, all that matters, all that defines them is sex. Because that's no more true for gay people than it is true for non-gay people.
Thank you so much, sir, for clarifying that for a lot of people, I think, out here. Now, moving on to the concept of allyship. So essentially, all social movements encourage people to become allies, but the concept of allyship in itself and what it entails is seldom discussed. Please enlighten us on how to navigate the turf between being an ally without an appropriation of space. And for example, who is an LGBTQIA+ ally according to you?
I think of an ally as somebody who, first of all, I believe everybody belongs in the space. We should all respect one another. We should all try to listen to each other. We should all be aware that there are differences. But at the same time, we all have values. We all have an interest in a better society in justice, in fairness, and kindness. And so it's important for everyone to feel the power to speak out. An ally to LGBT people, to gay people, to trans people, is somebody who understands that, yes, there are these differences, but there's also tremendous commonalities and much that we share and much that matters. And ultimately, it's the human that matters, not whether the human is, black or brown or white, or American or Indian, or male or female, or gay or non-gay. It's the person. And I'm going to stand up and speak for the people I love and celebrate their difference, but also uplift our common humanity. And so that's who an ally is. It doesn't require training. It doesn't require a specific legal role. It doesn't require an invitation. When we have conversations with other people in society, each one of us is the most powerful messenger, the most powerful person to the circle of people who look to us. The people that will care what I think is not going to be the same people who care what you think. They may overlap, but they won't be identical. You will reach people that I don't reach. And so you can be an ally by engaging in conversations and in organizing and doing work with those people, the people you bring in, the people you who trust you, who look to you, who listen to you, who you can reach. When we ran, for example, television ads during our campaign to win the freedom to marry, many of our ads, and people can see this on the website, freedomtomarry.org. There's a whole section of the videos and stories and so on, freedomtomarry.org. We would often run ads that would show gay couples, but the person speaking in the ad would be a non-gay family member or neighbor, because that person, that ally, could be the messenger who would reach the people we needed to reach. We wanted to show gay people together with non-gay people, to show that gay people are not some alien other beings who fell from the sky and have no connection to anyone. We're part of the family, we're part of the workforce team, we're part of the neighborhood, etc. But the messenger, the advocate, the explainer, the reassurer could often be the ally, what we called the non-gay validator. So we often would have, for example, a non-gay couple sitting around their kitchen with their kids playing nearby, and they would be talking about their neighbors next door, the lesbian couple who took care of the kids when they needed a babysitter, or who helped rake the lawn, or who they enjoy evenings of television watching or conversation together. And this non-gay couple might say something like, I never really knew any gay people growing up, but when this couple moved next door, we learned that they're incredibly sweet and helpful, and they took care of my mom when one day I was at work and she had an accident. And they have this conversation, and they're talking to other presumably non-gay people who are listening on television. And those non-gay people are seeing not just the gay couple, they're seeing a couple that they think of or who are like them. And they're helping them move. They're helping bring them along on this journey. And we also were showing them talking in front of their kids, so that the message that was also being sent to non-gay people was, this is not a threat to children. This is not something we can't talk about in front of the children. This is the values we want our children to have: love and openness and respect and kindness and peace. And so that was an example of how allies can play their role. I'll give you one more example. When President Obama, our last good president, and soon we'll have his vice president now as our president. Well, we now have his vice president as our president-elect, and hopefully we can get back on track in the United States. When President Obama came out in support of the freedom to marry for gay people, he did so in the middle of his re-election campaign. And he went on television and he spoke to the American people. But when he spoke, he didn't speak predominantly as a lawyer or as a law professor or as the president or as the commander-in-chief or someone. He spoke predominantly as a dad. And he talked to the American people, and he told the story of how he was at dinner one night with his daughters, Malia and Sasha, and Michelle Obama, his wife, the first lady, the daughter's mother. And the kids said to their parents, you know, we have kids in our class at school who are being raised by gay parents. And we don't think it's fair that their families are being treated worse than our family. And President Obama said to the American people, you know, when I heard my daughter say that, I realized they're right. If I want my daughters to grow up with my values of respect and dignity and fairness, I have to show them. I have to live up to those values myself. And so as a dad, it was important that I do the right thing. That's an example of how an ally can speak. Everybody has a story, everybody has a voice, everybody has their own values they can communicate, but we all have people we can reach. And as an ally, it's our opportunity and our job to help other people rise to fairness.
Thank you, sir. So, when we have a conversation about being an ally, acknowledging the gender expression of people without judgment or assumptions becomes important. So, how exactly do we inquire about a person's gender expression or their preferred pronouns without being intrusive or offensive? In general, what can be done to ensure and normalize the use of inclusive and sensitive vocabulary, according to you?
Yeah. Well, one thing you can do that is not intrusive is just show that you are ready, that you are welcoming, that you understand, that you're open. So you don't have to turn to somebody and say, I want you to answer 12 questions about about your identity or your sexual orientation or your gender identity. You can instead say, you know, I was on a call the other day, and let me tell you what I learned. Let me tell you what I found out. Or, you know, I have this wonderful friend who's transgender, and, you know, she and I were talking, and she said, blah, 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 blah. And then make room for the person you're talking with now to decide if she or he is ready or comfortable to open up. And even if they're not ready right away, you have sent a message that the door is open, that you're ready. You can do that a few times, you know, not in awkward ways, not in pushy ways, but showing the openness and showing the readiness that you're welcoming of the conversation, you're available. You can go one notch even stronger. You could even say, you know, if there's ever anything you want to tell me, I want you to know I'm very open to hear it. Or, you know, if there's ever anything you are dealing with that you feel you want to share, I want you to know I'm your friend. I'm there for you. And leave it at that. You know, now in some cases, if the relationship is such, you can go further. You can be more assertive, more direct, but you don't have to. You can send the message and send the message repeatedly, and not just through words, but through action. You can show that you have done something. You can come back to your friend later and you can say, you know what I did today? I sent a letter to the members of parliament saying that it's time for them to end discrimination in marriage. And you know why I did that? Because I believe that we need to have a society that treats everybody with respect. Or, you know, I went to a rally today, or I donated to the litigation for the freedom to marry in order to help that succeed. You can show by your actions that you support and care and want the right answers. So these are the kinds of ways you can, without being too intrusive and too pushy, open the door.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Now I'd like to hand over the session to Kevin right now.
Thank you, Naina. So can we move on to the question and answer session? So can we move on to the question and answer session?
Sure.
Sure. Thank you, sir. dear participants, like if you have a question, please raise your hands on Zoom Cloud meetings. The moderator will then pick up participants at random from those who have raised their hands for the speaker to answer. You'll be allowed to unmute your microphone by the moderator during this time to facilitate better discussion. Please follow the following steps to raise your hand in Zoom Cloud meetings for the benefit of all. During a meeting, click on the icon labeled Participants at the bottom center of your PC or Mac screen. Then at the bottom of the window on the right-hand side of the screen, please click the button labeled Raise Your Hand. Your digital hand is now raised. Then lower it by clicking the same button, now labeled Lower Hand. Or on a mobile device, simply tap Raise Hand at the bottom left corner of the screen. Then the hand icon will turn blue and the text below it will show to lower hand while your hand is raised. Now we'll be looking forward to questions. So the first question is from Vibhuti Gupta. Vibhuti, please raise your question. Vibhuti Gupta.
Good morning, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, sir. My name is Vibhuti Gupta. I'm from India. And my question to you is, during your time in USA fighting for the LGBT rights, what was your constant motivation after each hearing? Like you said that there were subsidiary thoughts and the society wasn't accepting these people. There might be a certain kind of pressure that you're representing so many people. So what kept pushing you to work harder and achieve your goal?
So I always believed that we could win. I always believed that even though things were not the way they should be, that most people are good and want to be fair. They may not be ready yet, but they can get there. And it's our job, it's our opportunity to help them get there. I believe, in India, as in the United States, we're lucky to live in societies that even if they're not perfect, we can do things. We have freedom of speech, we have freedom to organize, we have freedom to protest, we have freedom to litigate, we have freedom to vote. And we can engage and push the society, and we can reach out and persuade people. And so I always believed that we could do this. I knew it would take time, and it wasn't going to happen overnight. And we're not going to win every battle. We're not going to change every mind, and we're not going to persuade people the first time, every time we talk to them. But you don't have to take no for an answer. You keep going. And so it was really that belief that we could do it and that other people could do better. I trusted that other people would change if we helped them. And so individually and collectively, working as organizations and as a team, we were able to make that change happen. When I summarize how we won the freedom to marry in the United States, which took, by the way, more than 40 years. It didn't happen overnight. I wrote my law school thesis on why we should fight for the freedom to marry back in 1983, back when I had hair and I was young. I wrote, and then for 32 years, worked on it until we won in 2015. And I wasn't even the first one to do it. When I wrote my paper in 1983 as a student, I was writing about the first wave of couples who had bravely gone to court and had asked for the freedom to marry and had begun a national conversation back in the late 60s, early 70s. And one of those cases had gone to the United States Supreme Court. And in 1972, the Supreme Court got that answer wrong. They said there is no freedom to marry. They're not going to treat those couples right. So when I came along 10 years later, I was writing about why we should not accept that no, how we could change this through organizing, through conversation, through persuasion, through creating the climate, through litigation, through lobbying, through sticking with the strategy. And 32 years later, we did get that no turned into a yes. So when I summarize this whole story, and by the way, as I said, in India, yours is going to go faster. It's not going to take 40 years because you're not starting back in 1983 or 1972. This is 2020. We now have the freedom to marry in 29 countries. We had 0 when I started. It's a different world now. But when I summarize this story, what it takes to win, if I had to give you 3 words, the 3 words are hope, clarity, and tenacity. Now, by tenacity, I mean that you have to stick with it. Don't give up. Just because somebody says no, just because your mom is being difficult, or your friend is being disappointing, or a stranger is being ugly, don't give up. You've got to keep working at it. You have to keep going. It takes time. You don't win every battle. We lost many battles until we won. So you need tenacity. You need to stick with it. You need to keep going. You need clarity. And by clarity, I mean clarity of your goal, clarity in your strategy. What will it take to win? What do you need to do? What do you need to worry about? And what don't you need to worry about? Who do you need to bring in? Who do you need to reach? And who will you never get? And it doesn't matter. Clarity in your strategy, clarity in your goal, clarity in your work. And clarity can help you organize your work better and be more effective, but it also helps other people see the pathway, see the possibility, and want to join you. So tenacity, clarity, but it begins with hope. You have to believe you can make a change. You have to believe other people can do better. Your society can be made whole. You have to believe. And not only do you have to believe it, you have to convey that hope to other people. Because if you tell everybody all the time how terrible it is, how wrong everything is, how the system is rotten, politicians are terrible, etc. If you're always talking about the problem, you're not showing the pathway. And then you're giving people permission for inaction, for cynicism, for despair, to give up. So I believed, and I worked to convey that belief for 32 years, to convey that hope. And even when we took a stumble or a fall or a disappointment or a defeat, I would always try to show people, maybe we didn't win today, but we are losing forward. We are losing forward because it may not have been enough today to get here, but we moved these people. We changed this. We are still on our strategy. We are still on our pathway forward. And sticking with that strategy, we can overcome the losses and win. And that's what we did. So hope, clarity, and tenacity are the keys to making change, which is difficult, over time, which is what it will take.
Thank you, sir. Next question is by Catherine. Catherine, please raise your question to sir.
Catherine, please unmute yourself.
Catherine, are you there? I think there is a technical issue. We'll move on to the next person. 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗃𝗀𝗏. 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗃𝗀𝗏, please ask your question. 𝗏𝗏, please unmute yourself. Yes, sure. You can ask the question in the chat. In the meanwhile, we'll read the question is from 𝗏𝗏. The question is, in USA during Trump's presidency, transgender persons were badly affected. Certain schools didn't permit trans kids in sports, or adult trans persons were denied benefits in army. Trump even dominated a SCOTUS who doesn't believe in rights for the rainbow community. What changes do you see coming forth under President Biden, given your Vice President Kamala Harris' track record of throwing incarcerated transgender women prisoners into male prisons?
So on the specific last point with Kamala Harris, I don't think that's a fair representation of Harris's record as a district attorney, which was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, about 10 years ago or 15 years ago. I think she would say that some of what she did is misrepresented, and some of it is that's just not true at all. And she's learned a lot, and society has moved forward. And she has been endorsed, and as was Joe Biden, by pretty much every leading gay and transgender leader and organization who have looked at their records and said, you know, none of them is perfect, but they've come a very long way, and this will be the most pro-LGBT, most pro-gay, most pro-trans administration that we've ever had in the United States. So I don't think that negative comment at the end is actually a fair summary of her record or what to expect. But the rest of the question is absolutely correct. The Trump administration, the Trump regime, was tremendously hostile to gay and to trans people, as well as so many others, Muslims, immigrants, women, etc., and did many terrible things that fortunately President Biden will be able to reverse immediately. For example, the service of trans people in the military. That's something that Trump twisted in absolutely the wrong direction, even over the objections of military leaders. And the president will be able to fix that and has promised to fix that pretty much from day one. May not literally, there's so much to do on day one, it might be day two, but it'll be early. I'm quite confident that that's going to be fixed and changed. Same with the guidance throughout the federal government, the regulations and guidance about treating sexual orientation and gender identity as aspects of sex that are protected under federal civil rights law. Earlier this year, we won another big victory in the United States Supreme Court, in which the court said that the federal civil rights law's prohibition of sex discrimination when it comes to employment also includes sexual orientation and gender identity, because sexual orientation and gender identity are in some sense aspects of sex. You can't even spell sexual orientation without the word sex. You can't talk about gender identity without referencing treatment of people with regard to sex. So the United States Supreme Court, a very right-wing court with a Trump appointee writing the opinion, nevertheless held that the proper understanding of sex is to include sexual orientation and gender identity. So I'm quite confident that the Biden-Harris administration from day one will be issuing regulations and guidance that will implement that legal standard across all areas of federal reach, which include, as the questioner said, education, sports, etc. Now, we still need to have non-discrimination law enacted by Congress. The president can't do everything with a magic wand, but Trump did a lot of bad things, and this administration will, I'm quite confident, change those things very, very quickly and move progressively and strongly forward, building on the Obama-Biden record and the progress we made earlier. Having said all of that, it's not just about Biden and it's not just about Harris, even though they are both champions of gay and trans people and gay and trans equality and have run and pledged to do so. But it's also about the work we all have to do. We have to do work in our states, we have to do work in our legislatures, we have to do work in our families, we have to do work in Congress, and we have to do work in our elections. It's not just about the president, it's about the work we all do as the people.
Thank you, sir. Next question is by Catherine. She has sent the question through the text message since she has a technical issue. The question is how to tackle or deal with healthcare setting in legal or medical transitioning and not facing gatekeeping.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question. Say it again.
Yeah, how to tackle or deal with healthcare setting in legal or medical transitioning and not face gatekeeping.
Yes. So I'm not a technical expert in all of these areas. So I'm not sure I get exactly the specific question you might be asking, but I do know that I worked over the summer and up through this election with a whole team of activists and experts and leaders, gay and trans, but also really pretty much everybody who was supporting Biden and Harris, and writing enormous detailed briefings and recommendations for what action should be taken across the government on day one, what action should be taken in the first 100 days, and what are the policies that need to be implemented. And many of the people I work closest with in my little working group were trans activists and leaders who I'm sure have given tremendously detailed guidance that should be implemented with regard to regulatory approaches and health guidance, education guidance, so on, that will vastly improve the treatment and lives of trans people as well as gay people as well as non-gay people. So I'm not expert enough to be able to answer your question in general, but I do know that the people who are experts have been deeply in touch with the campaign and with the transition that's now in place, getting ready to take power, and will be part of the administration going forward to help move policy in the right direction.
Thank you, sir. The final question is by Meenakshi. She has a question to ask you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for this wonderful session. My last question to you is, you had mentioned earlier that we have around 29 countries where freedom to marry has been given. But I believe that the right to equality is an absolute right that has been given, in fact, by all constitutions. But especially in India, when we talk about right to marry, and in fact, even with the 2018 judgment, the argument of public morality was something which was used a lot. And I think that the argument of public morality, especially when in 2020, when everybody is everywhere and we've grown intellectually more, I think, competent to change the way everybody thinks, I think that the argument of public morality shouldn't be given so much emphasis by, say, the judiciary. What is your take on that?
Yeah, so public morality, I guess we can think of in two different ways. If you want to talk about the moral vision that underlies the Indian Constitution or the US Constitution, there is a moral vision of respect for the individual, respect for human autonomy, respect for freedom, respect for the rule of law, respect for equality under the law. These are part of the moral vision of our society, both of us. And we're lucky that we live in societies, even if not perfect, that embrace this democratic, human rights, liberal democratic, pluralistic vision, an idea of welcoming people who are different to share in what we in the U.S. Declaration called inalienable human rights, the inalienable rights of life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, equality, etc. So there is that moral vision. But sometimes people use public morality to be scolding other people because they're not making the choices that they think they should make. They don't believe in the sex roles that they think they should have, or they don't believe in the religions or the doctrines or whatever. And I believe when it comes to that meaning, that's not what government exists to do in a free, pluralistic, rule of law society like India or like the United States. We respect the dignity and the individual humanity of each person to make those fundamental choices for him or herself, even if they're choices we think are bad or wrong. That's not government's role. Government's role is to protect the space in which we can all maximally fulfill our human aspirations, respecting others, not stepping on others, protecting everyone. But within that sphere of protection, it's not government's role to make the choices for you. It's your role to make those choices, even if it's somebody else thinks it's the wrong choice, even if the majority thinks it's the wrong choice. So in that sense, government does not exist to enforce moral choices. Government exists to protect your ability to make those moral choices alongside everybody else making their own moral choices.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir. There is one last final question that was raised. Do you have time to take that question?
Sure. One last question.
Thank you, sir. One last question that was raised by Francis. So his question is, do you feel that India's relationship with the United States of America will help make positive progress to India's legislation surrounding LGBTQIA+ rights, including anti-discrimination and civil unions?
Yeah. So first of all, everyone on this call is more of an expert in India than I am. You know India better than I do. I've been to India many times. I've loved my time in India. My husband and I traveled through India several times and have been to much of the country, but I would not call myself an expert in India. As I mentioned, my friends 𝗦𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗏 and Arundhati are two of the lawyers doing the case now on marriage, as they were two of the lawyers on the case on the 377. So I know a lot about India, but you are the experts more than me. But what I can say is that the United States should be on the side of human rights and setting a good example and inspiring other countries and other societies to move in the right direction of democracy and pluralism and justice. And we are not perfect in the United States, but we do stand for something, and we believe in something, and we represent something. And I think a lot of the rest of the world looks to the United States. Even if they criticize the United States, they still have hope that the United States is going to stand for the right thing. And in the last 4 years, we have been under a regime that has not stood for the right thing, and that has been doing the wrong thing, and has disrespected other countries and our own values. The American people never voted for that regime, not in 2016, and this time, again, given the chance to vote, they voted massively to throw out that regime. And so I hope that sends a message to India and to other people around the world that the United States does believe in these values, and we all need to work together, respecting each other, toward these values of democracy and pluralism and justice. And I hope that does have power in India. I hope that does inspire people in India, and I hope it sends a message to the government in India to be careful and to do the right thing. You know India better, but that's what I hope will happen. I hope it will send this message that if the United States can fix a mistake and get back on track, India can do the right thing too.
Thank you, sir. I now invite Naina for the vote of thanks.
Thank you, sir, for this wonderful session. On behalf of our team and the participants, I would like to thank you for your time and for being a part of this interview session, making it an eye-opener. Your words have been of great value indeed, sir. Now, I would like to thank the participants for taking part in this session and being active and voicing your opinions. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Notikums team members for making this event possible, the social media team for their constant posts and updates, the organizational team that looked into platforms for the webinar, and the rest of the team members who ensured the smooth functioning of this event. Once again, thank you all for your attendance to the 7th session of the Secret of the Circle webinar. For more details on our upcoming webinars, please do follow us on our Instagram page at Notikums Official. We look forward to seeing all of you on our future sessions.